I was having a discussion with a friend last night, and he mentioned to me that he feels like there's a transition, literally and figuratively, that is common amongst incels. He makes an argument about how a lot of incels eventually go down the transgender or femboy pipeline. Two different things, but you get what I'm saying. Now, my Discord server for the past 6 to 8 years has been filled with femboys, depressed young males, and e-girls. And that's obviously because I make videos about these subjects, and it's always been support or I will simply just talk about the subject. So naturally my Discord will fill with that. I always felt though, there was a bit of a overgeneralization or stereotype about incels that I've seen people say numerous times online that you can guess from the title. So my friend, he doesn't believe the stereotype completely. I don't know his situation. My friend who's mentioning this, he was a femboy who was promoting himself on Twitter years ago. If you've seen my older videos, you know who I'm talking about, that friend. He says there's a demographic of people in the LGBTQ plus community that is definitely incel. And he says it's based on the fact that a lot of young men are unable to find women to be with. So instead, they start becoming the girl themselves, or they just start smashing their feminine homies. Now, let's take a step back, because the definition of an incel is somebody who is unable to essentially attract women. Oftentimes, these same individuals also come with an ideology that is hostile towards those who are able to attract women. Some also just hate women as well. So my friend says a lot of people who he knows attracted to femboys or have this obsession with smashing those who are transgender, not all, but a lot of them are just into it based off of the fact that they are unable to attract real women. Now, here's my take on this. I feel, first of all, if the first thing you identify a transgender individual with is something perverted, I feel like you're sort of demeaning everything else about this individual. For those who are transgender, am I wrong to say you don't like being sexualized immediately? Some of y'all just want to live and just be who you want to be. I feel like there are people out there who just think sexual rather than look at you as an individual. I think a lot of people in the community have also strictly made it perverted though. I wouldn't say there's a thin line, and you may disagree with me about it not being a thin line, but I don't think there's much of a thin line between having gender dysphoria versus being arousing. I think those two can work together, but I don't think it's a thin line. Some people have dysphoria, and that's just what it is. And some people, they're doing it for arousal purposes. Sometimes even both. And what happens is those who do it for arousal purposes transition. Y'all go online and flood the internet with adult content. And since people are addicted to adult content, or watch it at least, they just assume all y'all are perverts. I'm going to use femboys for an example, because this happens to them a lot. If you just look up femboy, you just see sexualized content, bro. Like, a lot of people are just sexualizing this stuff rather than it being part of a lifestyle or culture. It wasn't always like that. There are femboys who like to dress up, and they're not thinking about it being sexual online and doing wild poses. But unfortunately, because it's been over sexualized, when people think of femboys, they think of perversions immediately. And for people who have been on the internet, who haven't been introduced to femboys in the past 5 years or so, you know I'm speaking facts right now. Femboys weren't always a sexualized or over sexualized things. It wasn't even sexualized to begin with. Like, people just decided to all of a sudden just go online and start doing some wild poses and stuff like that. I don't understand where this even came from, but now that's what people associate femboys with. It just turned it sexual. And I've seen this with other communities. For some reason, people just want to sexualize transgenders all the time. And that's all they associate it with. Rather, it being something specifically about their identity. They don't care about that. And I feel like a lot of people get into the perverted femboy craze and perverted transgender craze because they're seeing it on adult websites. And because that's their only interaction or consumption or viewing of individuals in these communities, that's all they associate with. Or rather, that's the first thing they associate with. Now, there's an argument that people say where they say, well, Aku, those communities are all about perversions anyway, right? The LGBTQ plus community, they're all perverts anyway, right? I disagree. Again, I'll say I partially disagree. There are people with genuine gender dysphoria, and they just want to be who they want to be and live life. And then there are people who just are into sexual purposes. Like they're just into the sexualization purposes. Like I think those who have decided to do the sexualization purposes, I think they contribute to why people believe the communities are just filled with sexual stuff, because they advertise themselves on the internet by doing perverted stuff. Transgenders who are not into just sexualizing themselves, they're not advertising themselves on the internet. You know what I'm saying? So again, people are just being introduced to this, the sexual part of it. Meanwhile, again, everyone else in the community is just trying to live their life and exist in society. With this being said, going back to the thesis of this video, right, about what my friend said, because there are people only sexualizing these communities. And because those who are perverting these communities are pushing it so much to the internet, a lot of young men who consume a lot of adult content find it more convenient to participate in something like this in a perverted way. Now, think about this logically. If you are consuming so much adult content, like a lot, don't you think these same people won't be in an active relationship, especially an active sexual relationship? Of course, like if you're consuming that much adult content, why you think you're in a relationship? You think these people are really like smashing people? Really think about it. It's very unlikely, right? Now, overconsumption of adult content unfortunately comes with developing an objectification of women. Not all the time. Listen, just because you watch adult stuff doesn't mean you think women are objects. But for those who have zero interaction with women ever, and all they do is consume women online, busting it open, what do you think is eventually going to develop mentally? And again, oftentimes when you overconsume, you will participate in it in some possible way. And for those who overconsume adult content, you eventually get bored of what you're watching. So you start experimenting. Then you start getting into other communities, hopefully legal stuff. And this is how you end up starting to like, I don't know, traps. And you start getting into other perversions. And if you think I'm lying, for anyone here who does consume a lot of adult content, you can attest. You looked up so many different things because you spent so much time consuming this stuff. Then you got bored of certain categories and perversions, and you start seeping into other things. Last year, you were really into this. Now this year, you like this thing. It is what it is. It's just part of the game here, right? But I don't think somebody who is in an incel position mentally is always going to directly or likely enter the transition, the transition pipeline, I'll say. I get the argument, but I think it's an over-exaggeration. I get where it's coming from, but we have to understand where this is coming from. A lot of individuals in an incel mindset are young men. Young men are very impressionable. So when they see something that has already been very attractive to them and is something they're constantly putting their mind to, is it a surprise they decided to switch over? Or maybe any of you who can share your experience, any of you watching or listening to this video, share your experience. But I'm sure some of you, let's use femboys as an example again. You saw a lot of femboy culture stuff online, and then you decided, hey, I'm gonna join. I'll try this out myself, because hey, and because you consume so much of the culture, you saw what it is. You're overexposed to it and you decided to try it. So, hey, some of you may be even transitioning. You saw and consumed a bunch of the community and you already had something going on internally, potentially, about how you felt about your own identity, and it helped you push you to the next step. Does that make you an incel? No. Now, here's the argument I could say that I partially agree with my friend. Incels are very, how do I put this? I wouldn't say they're all narcissistic, but incels are very much in their head about their insecurities and extreme belief systems. It's so bad that it's the main reason why they're unhappy with their life, because they're basically obsessed with their own insecurities. Some of them end up seeing transitioning as an upgrade or an opportunity rather than a genuine motivation for self-identification. It's kind of exploitative. It's like this idea that relates to what exactly an incel is like. Oh, if I'm so bad at being a man, it's probably easier to be a woman. If I can't get a girl, I'll just become the girl instead, right? Like my friend was saying. That's why I'm talking about partially I agree with his argument here. It's almost like people like this, like this are forcing themselves into something based on their feeling that they have weak masculinity. So you know what happens, right? This goes back. Notice how this comes together as a puzzle here. Incels who exploit the community like this, they'll be like, oh, I can't find a way to have sex with women, so I'll just be the woman and over sexualize everything because that's my coping mechanism to how I can't find myself physical intimacy. And besides, I don't understand women, so it's just easier if I'm the woman now. And see, this is how this argument ends up coming together here. And this is how you end up finding people who are just over sexualizing y'all. I feel like, and then y'all just advertising and posting yourselves online. Meanwhile, the people in the transgender community who are just minding their own business, just want to live life and just want to support each other. They're just doing their own thing. And next thing you know, you just see some person, some transgender who's just over sexualizing everything. And they'd be like, oh my God, I'm just going to bust it open. Like, I feel like some people went down an incel to transgender pipeline, and then they proceeded to completely make a bad rep of the community. And listen, here's the funny thing, y'all. Yo, this is, and it's funny because some people are so delusional about this. Yo, if you're an incel and you transition, that doesn't change the fact you have an incel-like mentality. Because for some reason, people act like it just disappears, such as terrible social skills, sociopathic tendencies, extreme insensitivity towards anything, illogical and extremely dangerous and hurtful thinking. I could keep listing things. That's not going to change just because you switched up. And these people who end up doing this, once somebody challenges their ideologies, this is what I meant about exploiting. They'll shield it by calling you transphobic. They'll use the community as a way to justify the fact that they have a hurtful opinion or an extreme opinion that hurts other people. Or there's this whole, LGBTQ plus community are filled with bullies, right? You heard that before, like, the whole gay community is filled with bullies. That's how people will say it, right? And insensitively. You know where that comes from? Where do you think it comes from? These people who I'm referencing, who exploited the community, started going online and saying completely idiotic and extreme things. Then when someone says something against it, oh, look at this guy. This guy is transphobic. He's attacking me. He's disagreeing with me because of who I am. What? Isn't it ironic, the correlation here? Because some of y'all probably don't see it. Isn't it ironic? Because you might be part of the problem yourself. Incels always act like victims. Woman this, woman that, this person that, why me, everyone this and that to me. Yet, people that act that way and using the community as a meat shield is also very much victimhood. See, this is what happens. There are a lot of amazing people in the community who just want to live and mind their own business. They just want to be who they want to be. And I have the ultimate respect for that, as I've shared in my videos too. And I even encourage the behavior. Like, I've always been supportive of the community, but what happens is the people who go down the incel to transgender pipeline are the ones who are the most flamboyant. They're always pushing extremely questionable narratives online and then somehow find a way to victimhood themselves. And then other people online see this who know nothing about the community, right? And then they end up stereotyping the whole community. And then this is where you'd be like, oh, well, see, they're all bullies. A lot of people are just minding their own business. It's just the fact that we got these flamboyant ones who just want to, use it as a meat shield because, I'll just say that somebody's being transphobic or somebody's trying to attack me or somebody, you got to be oversensitive for some reason. You got to be oversensitive. You always got to find a way to make it seem like someone is trying to attack you or hurt you, because that's all they care about with the community. Like, this is what I'm talking about. There are people who are exploiting it and it's making everyone look bad. I feel like there are people who care more about the social status and exploiting it versus the people who have the actual heart of what the community is supposed to be. Now, don't get it twisted. Like every community, there are people who ruin it, right? There are stereotypes of every community out there. It's just unfortunate that, like, the example I use so many times in this video, like femboys, people have either over-sexualized it or they turned it into a shield to justify their poor behavior. It's like that right now in this community. And I genuinely feel bad for y'all. We are in a time period where young adults are at their loneliest moments. There are studies about this proving that young men are in a loneliness epidemic. Obviously, in return, this also increases the frequency of incels being spawned. Is it not a surprise people who are lonely and feel like they don't have a place or a community to stay, they start seeping into welcoming communities like the LGBTQ plus community? And again, just because you transitioned, it doesn't mean you changed your ideologies. It's hard for me to say directly. It's hard for me to say, I feel like some people are in it for the wrong thing. I feel like it's hard for me to say that, because who am I to say your reason for transitioning is necessarily wrong if that's what makes you happy? My issue is people taking advantage of it. So with my friend, even though we disagree with each other to an extent, we also agree at the same time. I think every incel doesn't end up becoming a transgender. I don't even think most of them do. I think it's exaggerated. However, as you heard the arguments I made, I can see how that can happen. I can see how the incel to transgender pipeline can happen easily. And when it does happen, I can see what the effects will be. And I also see it being very concerning that people are turning it into something overly sexual rather than it just being about identity and supporting others who also feel lost about their identity. It's supposed to be something supportive, not about let's make it some horny community. But hey, that's just how I'm looking at it. That's just my perspective on it. I feel bad for y'all. I think a lot of people have ruined it. I think a lot of people have made y'all easily stereotyped, and a lot of y'all just want to mind your business, and unfortunately you get dragged into this because you're part of a community and these people just ruin it for y'all. So hey, this episode is found, let me know what you guys think about this, by the way. This episode is found on Spotify and YouTube 8 times.
Nightmare 7 a.m. in the morning though, no surprise. Times Square's you and I under those lights, no disguise. Don't tell me everything you wanted was a lie. All those city lights, it's an endless night. Never expected you to bring me so much life. Close my eyes too long, then it's time to say goodbye. Let's dance all night until the stars don't show glow. Till the sunrise, then we go solo. Making up for all the times that we were low. Let's make some memories before we do go. Let's dance all night until the stars don't show glow. Till the sunrise, then we go solo. Making up for all the times that we were low. Let's make some memories before we do go. Caution, wait a moment, keep my heart locked away, it's filled with emotion. Gave the key to you, right in front of you is open. Hey, try your best to not leave it broken. Oh, it's been a while since you know it's frozen.